Ahoy guys, thanks for tuning in to Fancy Free Philosophy, the world-renowned and highly profound pinnacle of broadcast professionalism. Anyway, I'm fully prepared to record a video on Iran and Trump's elimination of Qasem Soleimani, but so I can dive right into the relevant material in the Iran video, first I'm going to set the table with a general overview of U.S. foreign policy. So, progressives and Democrats will probably enjoy this video, especially with the Bush Sr. and Bush Jr. material. It might bother some of my normal right-leaning audience, but maybe not so much anymore these days. Things have changed, and Trump got elected on an anti-interventionist platform in the Republican Party of avoiding expensive, endless wars while still building a strong military, maintaining solid national security. So to start, let's remember two things can be true at the same time. We can support our veterans, our troops, military, and promote a robust national security via a strategy of achieving peace through the deterrence of military strength, while also opposing expensive and unnecessary military interventions and operations that don't serve the citizens' best interest. And lastly, before the possibly controversial stuff, to everyone in military service, veterans, police officers, firefighters, emergency personnel, thank you for your service to the American people and or your communities. You can't have a safe country or community without a strong military or police force and, first responders and stuff. They save lives. You folks are more courageous than I am, honestly. And also, let's remember, throughout this video, the rank and file are not the ones orchestrating the overall game plan. So to get into the red meat here, let's remember wars are funded by taxpayers, common citizens, but especially in recent decades of U.S. foreign policy, the benefits accrue to the politically connected, powerful, the elite, for lack of a better term. For example, Halliburton and Blackwater. Now, entrepreneurs can use their creativity to help solve military problems, but often government contracts are given to the politically connected, and such as regional monopolies, government-granted monopolies to utilities. So, for specific examples of bad foreign policy, start with Bush Sr., who ordered the brutal slaying of 150,000 Iraqi troops in a convoy of military vehicles carrying white flags. They were on their way back to Iraq under the Geneva Convention rules of agreed disengagement and withdrawal. These are international laws of warfare. So imagine the horror of the Iraqi troops when, in spite of waving their white flags of surrender, they were mowed down by American aircraft. In another part of the front, 12,000 Iraqi soldiers were buried alive in trenches they occupied. This occurred in 1991. This was the Gulf War. And if I'm not mistaken, late February 1991. Now, I'm trying to be fair here, so if you like any of these presidents, generally I like the Bushes a little more than Obama. And I dislike some of their stuff, like the Patriot Act especially. And with Obama, I liked his how he protected endangered elephants by stopping the poachers and stuff. So I got to be honest, straightforward, and try to be fair. So I'm not a supporter per se of any politician. I support certain policies, and I don't like other policies. So anyway, with Obama, dropped 100,000 bombs in the Middle East. 3/4 of the casualties were civilians. In Libya, Obama and Hillary orchestrated the overthrow of Gaddafi, who was in fact an authoritarian dictator. Let's just be honest here. But the mullahs in Iran are much more brutal and authoritarian. And I'm going to take a wild guess and say that I think progressives and Democrats would be slightly upset if Trump overthrew them. So, also, after they were very firm with Gaddafi, Obama and his administration, they worked out a deal with Gaddafi and set up mutual commitments and promises, so they wouldn't intervene further and Gaddafi would remain in power as long as he met at least two conditions that I can recall. So one, Gaddafi began consistently assisting us and feeding us intelligence to help the United States root out and eliminate terrorist groups. So, that's good. And number 2 is by far the most significant here. Gaddafi actually handed over his nuclear weapons to the United States. He actually gave up his nukes. So, by completely betraying the agreement and overthrowing Gaddafi, United States' credibility and trustworthiness on the world stage regarding denuclearization was obliterated. So, consequently, achieving denuclearization with North Korea or anyone else will be almost impossible. So, I don't know about you guys, but within that context, our chances don't look very high to me after that happened. If you're wondering, we're saving Trump for the next video. So, then there's the more recent George W. Bush administration. Now, the Patriot Act is not technically foreign policy, but it was justified using the heightened terrorist fears of the time, greatly expanded the authority of the NSA, the CIA, and so on, which enabled the proliferation of massive domestic surveillance of American citizens that Edward Snowden exposed in 2013, which James Clapper lied about while under oath to Congress earlier in 2013. Personally, I consider Edward Snowden courageous and somewhat of a hero for telling the American people what was going on. Anyway, so the NSA database has all texts, emails, internet activity, electronic communication of every American that they're able to get a hold of. Quite Orwellian, I'd say. Conservatives, or really anyone who listens to the great Dan Bongino show, will know that he opposed it from the start and is a former Secret Service agent and New York City police officer. So personally, I agree. I'm against the Patriot Act. Now, moving on, there's a nearly ubiquitous misconception about Saddam Hussein, who did not have nukes, but he did, in fact, have biological and chemical weapons. And according to a couple information sources, that's where the Syrian dictator Assad got his chemical weapons from. That could be wrong, but if forced to wager, I'd bet that's true. And on an interesting side note, I found out, based on 2 independently funded, self-reliant sources without compromised motives, that Assad using chemical weapons on his own people is likely a hoax. And logically, he had no discernible incentive to do so, that I can tell. In fact, many serious incentives not to. International public outcry, and, possible ousting, taking him out because of the grievous human rights abuses that would entail. But I'll talk about that in another video, maybe. But either way, Assad is a dictator, and tyranny equals bad, in my opinion, and I'm sure in most people's opinion. But I don't support pulling an Obama and Gaddafiing him, Assad, that is. Anyway, so Bush said weapons of mass destruction, which is unnecessarily vague, and in my opinion, it was probably intentionally misleading to give Americans the impression that that Saddam had nukes and that the situation was worse than it really was. I mean, just think, weapons of mass destruction. I don't know, how does that feel to you? It sort of implies nukes. That's what I think, but either way, it was just sort of, like I said, unnecessarily vague. He could have been a little more specific. The federal government's primary responsibility is to protect Americans from foreign powers and domestic threats like mafias, criminal organizations, and domestic terrorism. So, in my opinion, in order to maintain deterrence to discourage attacks on America, such as 9/11, we had to take retaliatory action towards Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda, if it is indeed the case that bin Laden was the mastermind behind 9/11. But we have many reasons to be skeptical of the government's portrayal of events, just in general, across the board. But anyway, bin Laden was a wealthy founder of Al-Qaeda from Saudi Arabia. Most of Afghanistan came under the rule of the Taliban in the 1990s. So the general consensus is that the Taliban allowed bin Laden and al-Qaeda to operate from within their territory there in Afghanistan. But beyond what was a necessary retaliation, the problem is that Bush probably went much further than necessary, as far as I can tell. And he got us entangled in these indefinite occupations, which are still going on to this day, which most likely can be heavily attributed to enriching and empowering the ruling class with access to oil and opium farming, among other reasons, some good, some bad. Bush Sr. was the former CIA director and was heavily involved in their massive global drug trafficking enterprise. Conservative folks, give me just a minute, I'll expose some Democrats, but the Bush family is part of the ruling elite who enrich themselves at the expense of the common citizens. So even though Bush Sr. was CIA director for only a year in the early 1980s, he maintained being a member of these networks of the ruling elite before and after his 1 year as director. In the early 1980s, Bush Sr. recruited Bill Clinton while Bill was the governor of Arkansas to help him use a remote airstrip that didn't have a tower that was outside of the public eye. They appropriated military aircraft for their operation. I forget whether taking the aircraft was legal, but it hardly matters since the ruling class has obviously been above the law for decades. Bush Sr. and Clinton emptied out the planes, they sold the equipment, and then they used the planes in a cocaine trafficking enterprise. They would stuff the noses and other parts of the plane with cocaine. So Bush Sr. made Bill Clinton who he was by enriching him for their joint venture in drug trafficking. The two-party system is largely a facade used to distract voters from the crimes and exploitative schemes of the entrenched ruling class. I dug into some documents and other evidence and stuff that shows that beginning 3 months after its founding in 1947, the CIA teamed up with a mafia in Genoa or Sicily. I think it was Genoa or something. This mafia was in danger of crumbling, but they achieved mutual enrichment through their joint heroin trafficking operation. So the mafia benefited from the resources the CIA contributed, and the CIA benefited from gaining the mafia's connections in the drug trade. So I understand this sounds like tinfoil hat conspiracy theory stuff, so I'm not going into this any further. We'll save that for another video. I'll provide supporting evidence and stuff. But whether or not you believe that particular story, we do know that for years, the United States government was guarding opium fields in Afghanistan, so this isn't a complete tangent. This connects back to how modern U.S. foreign policy has been used to enrich the ruling class. So people talk about oil a lot, but the ruling elite using taxpayer-funded government operations to support their global drug trafficking schemes is something that needs to be brought to the public's attention. So far, I haven't found evidence of Trump's administration making decisions on military activities attributable to his administration that support these drug trafficking operations. But I'll let you know if I do. We'll talk about Trump, like I said, in the next video on Iran, which will address a couple other foreign policy moves of his administration near the end after I address the Iran stuff. To address some politicians who aren't presidents, first let me say political candidates are required to disclose certain financial information, including campaign financing, so to be easily viewed by the public. However, this is not required for their spouses and children, etc. So, specifically, Mitch McConnell, Senate Majority Leader, has been able to have his wife, Elaine Chao, conduct lucrative deals with the Chinese Communist Party under her name, which has yielded them tens of millions of dollars. Their net worth was $3.1 million in 2004. Now it's $10 to $36 million. I'm not sure why that range is so wide, but that's the info I was able to get. So basically, in the late 1990s, Mitch McConnell was tough on China, and around the beginning of those deals, he quieted down and became soft on China. Now, the same goes with Democrats Joe Biden and Dianne Feinstein, with deals with the Chinese Communist Party under both of their spouses' name, and also with Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden. So their Chinese dealings are about as serious as McConnell's. I'll go into the details of these three people in a video focused on that topic. But my point here is that millions of dollars in income are heavily swaying their foreign policy stances, as well as countless other House representatives and senators, with China and countless other countries besides China. These types of things influence serious foreign policy decisions far away from being in line with the best interest of the American people. If Trump's family did this stuff, progressives and Democrats would be outraged, as would I, as well as honest conservatives and Republican voters. But to avoid even a whiff of corruption, Trump's businesses and whole family stopped doing any foreign business deals whatsoever, even though it's completely legal as long as all laws are followed. They finished out the legally binding contracts they signed before the election, though, which is understandable. I'm not a partisan bootlicker here, so I can't deny Trump has many serious character flaws, policy flaws, including certain tariffs of his and certain public statements and tweets. The rhetoric and tweets that should have been scrapped after brief consideration before speaking or tweeting. Proofreading and reflection is something I think Trump doesn't do quite too often. But regarding Trump's many flaws and mistakes, I'm happy to discuss those. So you can comment your concerns and criticisms and stuff. And maybe I'll make a video replying to your comment or something like that. But, we'll see. So a few closing remarks. Please do me a quick favor and click the thumbs up for this video to help me out. If you click thumbs down, then the karma cops will burn your house down. Sounds crazy, I know, but my friend made that mistake, and it was not pretty, so I bribed a lot of politicians to set that one up, so you've been warned. Also, more comments help boost videos in the YouTube algorithms, and share my videos with people you think will enjoy them if you really want to help me out. If the show ever gets big, maybe you can shoot the breeze on here, you never know. I appreciate all your help. I'll set up a way for people to donate soon after I feel like I've earned it by providing some more quality content first, being more consistent, stuff like that. I got a few videos lined up here, and keep an eye out for my new video on Trump's foreign policy on Iran and killing Soleimani. Should honestly be within a couple days. Because my research is done, I'm all set to record that one. Thank you for listening, everyone. Stay fly, long live philosophy, and I will talk to you folks soon.